Hi, I'm Evan and I'm 29. For years, I just figured family meant you loved each other no matter what. You know, you're there for each other, no sweat. I kept that in my head through all the little digs, the times my successes were ignored, and every single time my brother Josh made sure I knew I wasn't one of them. When we were kids, it was dumb stuff. Like he got the brand new bike and I got the used one. He'd throw a fit until he got the bigger room. He got all the attention and I was like an afterthought. I'd tell myself it wasn't important, that when we were older things would be different, it would all even out, that we'd actually feel like a family. I held on to that thought for way too long. When I finally got my first real job after college, which was a super hard and competitive gig in a new city, I texted my family, stoked. Josh sent back a sarcastic slow clap gif. My mom said she was proud, but then asked if I could help Josh with his rent because he was having a rough time. It was always the same routine. Josh would mess up and I was supposed to bail him out. Never mind that he was older or that he'd always had it easy. I didn't. It kind of became a family joke, you know? That I was the responsible one, the safety net. Sometimes I'd laugh along just to fit in, but I kept score inside. Not to be mean, but for my own sake. Thanksgiving was always our big thing. It didn't matter where life took us, family gatherings always ended up at my parents' place. We'd all cram around that giant, worn-out table, pretending everything was hunky-dory. But last year was a whole different ballgame. Things started to click into place for me. I'd been killing myself working crazy hours, saving every penny for a down payment on my own house. Josh, on the other hand, he was hopping from job to job, racking up thousands in debt with my parents, and somehow still managed to flaunt his fancy concert and beach vacation pics all over social media. Every time I went home, the tension was suffocating. Mom would pull me aside, dropping hints about how Josh was just going through a rough patch. Dad would mutter about family sticking together, shooting me these pointed looks over his beer. I knew exactly what they were thinking. They wanted me to fork over more cash quietly without making a fuss. I told myself I could tough it out through Thanksgiving, just keep my head down, smile, nod, and get through it. That was the plan anyway. I even convinced myself maybe, just maybe, this year would be different. Maybe they'd finally see me as something more than their personal ATM. I brought a homemade pie, trying to get into the holiday spirit, you know. The house was jammed cousins I hadn't seen in ages, old family friends. It was one of those crazy, loud Thanksgivings, that mix of turkey and too much perfume, kids screaming in the background, the whole shebang. I tried to disappear, finding a quiet spot on the couch, nursing my drink and just listening. Pretty quickly, things went the way they always did. Josh, naturally, was the center of attention, spinning tall tales about his latest business deals and cracking jokes, mostly at my expense. I was used to it, his little digs about how I probably had a spreadsheet for my social life, or how my idea of a good time was reading tax law. I managed a tight smile, whatever, old news. Dinner was even rougher, though. They had me stuck at the very end of the table, practically hanging off a folding chair, while Josh was right next to Dad at the head. They were toasting his entrepreneurial spirit, completely ignoring the fact that his so-called ventures were only afloat thanks to constant bailouts from Dad. I kept smiling, kept my eyes on my plate. I just told myself to stay calm, not make a fuss. Then came dessert. Someone topped off everyone's drinks and Dad raised his glass to give some sappy speech about being grateful. I wanted to melt into the background. That's when Josh jumped up, glass held high, wobbling a bit from all the booze. "To family," he bellowed, grinning. "Except Evan, of course." The whole table erupted in laughter. Even Mom, who used to at least pretend to be uncomfortable with this stuff, snickered behind her napkin. I just sat there, staring at my half-eaten pie, feeling like I was freezing from the inside out. For a second, I almost joined in their laughter, you know, played along, kept things light. But I didn't. I carefully put down my fork, dabbed my mouth with my napkin, and smiled real sweetly. "Good thing I was prepared," I said, keeping my voice calm and steady. I reached under my chair and pulled out an envelope I'd slipped into my jacket before I left the house. I didn't make a scene or anything, just quietly placed it between Josh's drink and his half-eaten pecan pie. The laughter died down. Josh stared at the envelope, totally bewildered, the smirk draining right off his face. He looked up at me, trying for a weak grin like he thought it was some kind of prank. "What's this?" he mumbled, a little nervous. "It's a notice," I replied. He scoffed, ripped open the envelope, still trying to act all tough and breezy, still trying to pretend it was a joke. I watched his face go through all the changes. First, he was puzzled, then a little worried, and then, holy cow, pure terror. The room, which had been buzzing with happy chatter and clinking glasses, went completely silent. Everyone's eyes were on Josh as he just stared at the paper, his mouth flapping like a fish out of water. My dad leaned in, his brow all furrowed. My mom slammed her glass down a little too hard. I even heard a spoon clatter somewhere in the background. Finally, Josh looked up at me as pale as a ghost. You're not serious," he stammered. A slow, easy smile spread across my face. It felt like this huge weight I hadn't even known I was lugging around for years just vanished. I didn't speak. Not right then. I just let the silence hang there, heavy and awkward. You could practically feel the tension crackling in the air, and I wanted them to feel it, every bit of it. Because for the first time, I wasn't going to fix things. I wasn't going to save Josh. I wasn't going to make any of this easier. Josh's hand shook a little as he put the paper down, but he couldn't look away from it. His lips moved, but nothing came out. Like he was trying to find that usual cocky attitude of his, the quick jokes, the smug grin, but it was gone. Good. Let him stew in it for a bit. I wanted every fake laugh, every dismissive look, every little comment about me being the responsible one to come crashing down on him right there in front of everyone. Mom was the first to break. She grabbed the paper, her hand snatching at it. Her eyes darted over the words, and all the color drained from her face, just like Josh's. "Evan," she choked out. What is this?" I took my time. I picked up my glass, took a sip, and placed it back down real slow. Then I looked her in the eye. "It's a notice of Lien removal," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Filed this morning." The room went still. It felt like the whole house was holding its breath. Dad leaned in, his brow furrowed. What was I leaning on? I looked at him, all smiles. His truck, his apartment, that business loan you co-signed for him last year, all of it. I personally guaranteed it all so he could play the big man. I let that hang in the air for a second. A few of my cousins were staring, their forks halfway to their mouths, completely speechless. Forgotten the whole thing. "You co-signed for me?" Josh squeaked, his voice all shaky. I just tilted my head. "You didn't know," I said. "Mom and Dad needed someone with good credit, and yours wasn't exactly stellar." A kind of gasp went around the table. Josh was shaking his head like crazy. But you said you were helping. You said I was helping," I interrupted, still sounding sweet, almost like I felt sorry for him. "Until you decided to make a fool out of me again in front of everyone after everything." I paused, letting him stew in it. "See," I went on, still grinning like we were talking about the weather. "Liens come with consequences. When I pulled my guarantee this morning, that was it. The whole thing went kaput." "Meaning his truck," I gestured casually. "The one he's still paying off. The bank's gonna want that back probably by Monday. And his apartment. Yeah, with all that back rent he's been ignoring, without me on the lease, that's a big problem. A really big, immediate problem." Josh's mouth was flapping open and shut like he couldn't decide if he wanted to scream or cry, probably both. "And the business account," I added, thinking it over. "That office space you rent, all that high-end stuff you bought. It's on ice, buddy, frozen solid until they figure things out. Without my signature, it's all up in the air. And the bill collectors. They'll be ringing your doorbell any minute now, probably before we even get to the pie." The silence after that was heavy, like someone was sitting on my chest. Then Dad finally exploded, yelling, "You can't do this to your own brother." I just leaned back, crossed my arms, and said, "I didn't do anything to him. I just stopped doing for him." Boom, the truth was out there. Josh practically leaped out of his chair legs scraping across the floor. He stood there all red-faced and frantic. "You're ruining my life," he screamed, his voice cracking. I raised an eyebrow. "Funny," I said. "You never seemed to think I was part of your life unless you needed a handout." That stung him more than I thought it would. For a second, he looked like that little kid again, the one who used to push me around and laugh while I cried. But this time, no one was laughing. No one had his back. Even Mom just sat there, her face white and tight-lipped. He looked around the room, desperate for anyone to agree with him, but nope. The cousins who always thought his jokes were hilarious were just staring at their plates. The aunts and uncles were suddenly obsessed with their drinks. Even Dad looked awkward, whether it was guilt or just plain anger that his perfect son was in trouble, I couldn't say. Josh turned back to me, his face all crumpled and pathetic. He choked out, You can't just leave me hanging." I needed him to fix this, and I knew it. I swirled the drink in my glass, the dark stuff sloshing around. "I don't have to do a single thing, Josh," I told him quietly. "Not anymore." And with that, I got up. I pushed my chair in nice and neat, like everything was perfectly fine. I looked around at everyone. Their faces were shocked, the room was dead silent, and it was weird, but for the first time in forever, I didn't feel like I didn't belong. I felt free. I didn't say another word. I just turned and walked out of the dining room, my steps echoing in the quiet. I could hear Josh fall back into his chair. It sounded like all the air had been sucked out of him. My mom started whispering, then yelling at my dad. I could hear the awkward clinking of forks against plates as everyone tried to pretend they weren't witnessing a total meltdown. The cold November air hit my face as I stepped onto the front porch and gently closed the door. I stood there for a second, just breathing in the cold, letting it fill me up like a shield. Through the door, I could hear the muffled sounds of chaos. Frantic voices, chairs scraping, people running around. Good. Let them panic. Let them feel even a tiny bit of the helplessness they'd made me deal with for so long. I wasn't their fixer anymore. I wasn't their safety net. I was done plugging holes in their sinking ship while they laughed and kept making more. I walked down the front steps, taking my time with each one, finally tasting freedom. My car sat at the curb, loaded up and ready to roll. I knew how this evening was going to play out, even though I kept trying to tell myself otherwise. I'd prepared for this just like I prepped for everything. Methodically, silently, completely. When I got in the driver's seat, my phone vibrated like crazy against the dashboard. I peeked at it. 26 missed calls, mostly from Mom and Dad, a few from Josh, some from random cousins who probably had no clue what was up. Choose a side, stay out of it, they all screamed. They were begging me to fix it quietly before anyone else found out. I turned the ringer off and flipped the phone over. I wasn't in the mood for apologies. I didn't want to hear how it wasn't a big deal or that family's fight, or that he didn't really mean it. They always said that. Every single time Josh messed up, every time he embarrassed me, every time he made it clear that all I was good for was what I could do for him, not who I was. And every single time I was supposed to forgive, forget, and just grin and bear it. Because that's just Josh. Not anymore. I started the car, the soft growl of the engine centering me. I drove away from the curb, not in a rush, not in some big show, just calm and certain like a quiet getaway. The real storm was still brewing inside that house. I cruised through town, past the familiar streets lined with old oak trees and houses with drooping porches, already strung up with Christmas lights. I remember those walks as a kid, clutching my report cards. They barely even looked at them. I used to dream of the day they'd finally see me, really see me. I smiled just now thinking about it. It wasn't a mean smile, you know, more like a quiet, powerful kind of smile. They see me now, all right. I pulled into this tiny gas station about 20 minutes outside of town, parked under those flickering fluorescent lights. Had to check on something before I went any further. I grabbed my laptop from the passenger seat, set it up on my lap, and hooked it to my phone. The internet was super slow, but it didn't matter. I wasn't in a hurry. I had all the time in the world now, you know. I logged into that online banking thing, the one that handles all the legal stuff, the liens and all that. I went through it real slow, just soaking it all in. Notice served, account frozen, repossession starting. It was all happening exactly as planned. Josh would lose his truck first, probably before Monday. And those eviction notices, brutal this time of year. His business account, gone before he could even react. That fancy stuff he loved to show off, the monitors, the drone cameras, even that espresso machine he was always bragging about. It'll all be gone in a few weeks. No more pretending to be some big shot entrepreneur. No more living the high life on my dime. I shut the laptop with a click that felt really good, leaned back, and just stared at those buzzing lights. I wasn't stupid, you know? I figured they'd be after me. The guilt trips, the begging, maybe even yelling. My folks would probably try to call it a misunderstanding. They'd expect me to fix Josh's mess again, like always, brush it all under the rug. That's just how it went in my family. Josh messed up, I bailaid him out, life went on. But not this time. I had a plan. Earlier that week, I'd gotten in touch with a top-notch lawyer. I paid good money for a letter, sent it to every single person in my family. It basically said in no uncertain terms that I was cutting them off financially. Done. Any attempt to contact me about money would mean lawyers. All those past loans, gifts, everything gone like it never happened. They couldn't guilt me into anything. They couldn't shame me. They couldn't control me anymore. I was finally free. Sitting there under the buzzing gas station lights, it hit me. I wasn't running from them. I was running towards something. Peace. A life where my value wasn't tied to how much I could give them. A life with people who liked me for me, not for what I could do for them. The guy behind the counter probably thought I was crazy, grinning like an idiot, but I didn't give a damn. I grabbed a soda, gave him a huge tip just because, and got back on the road. The miles just flew by beneath my wheels, and with every one, years of resentment, loneliness, and holding my tongue till it hurt just vanished. It felt so good, so right. My phone buzzed once, twice, 3 times, but I didn't even look. I knew exactly what those messages said. Please come back. We can work this out. You're overreacting. Evan, fix this. You're ruining Thanksgiving. But they had it all wrong. I didn't ruin Thanksgiving. They did. They were just finally forced to deal with the mess they'd made without me there to pick up the pieces. I drove and drove until the town I knew was swallowed by the darkness, just fields and trees under that November sky. I didn't know exactly where I was going yet, just that I had a hotel room a few hours away. A couple of job interviews lined up in new cities, a whole new life slowly starting to take shape. And it was all mine. For the first time ever, I wasn't running on empty. I was running on pure freedom, and I wasn't about to stop. The next morning, I woke up in that quiet hotel room a couple towns away. The soft gray light came in through the thick curtains, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel that heavy weight of responsibility the second I opened my eyes. No frantic calls, no guilt-tripping voicemails waiting for me. Just silence, just peace. I stretched out, really taking it in. It was weird, you know. Freedom felt heavy at first, like I'd been lugging around a ton of bricks for ages and my body just didn't know how to relax. But it was getting easier, lighter with every passing second. I could feel it. When I finally looked at my phone, it was, like I knew it would be, a total disaster. 78 missed calls and a crazy number of texts. The family group chat, usually just vacation pics and those passive-aggressive political digs, was blowing up. I didn't even touch it. I wasn't ready to hear their voices in my head again. Not today. I ordered room service instead. A totally insane, overpriced breakfast I never would have allowed myself before. Pancakes, bacon, eggs, the works, and a huge coffee. When they knocked, I practically ripped the door open, grinning like an idiot, and tipped the guy a fortune. He looked shocked but happy, I guess. I didn't care. Let them be baffled by my joy. I'd earned it. I spent the morning making plans. There was still stuff to do if I wanted this break to last. Things to wrap up, accounts to close, and new ones to set up. I needed to get everything out of those old family accounts and into new ones they wouldn't even be able to find. New phone, new address, everything. No more mom listed as my emergency contact. No more dad having access to anything, just in case. I needed a fresh start, and I was getting one. So around noon, after my coffee was gone, I finally opened those messages. It wasn't because I felt bad, I just needed to see how crazy things had gotten. And yeah, I was nosy too. I wasn't let down. My mom had hammered me with text after text, each one worse than the last. First, the guilt trip, please Evan, this isn't you. You're better than this. Come home, let's talk. Then came the twisted stuff, like you're wrong about everything. Josh always looked up to you. You're just too sensitive. After that, the blame started flying. You're ripping this family apart. Over money, pride, we raised you better than this. Finally, it was pure panic. If you don't come back and fix this, Josh will lose everything. Can you live with that? Josh himself sent shorter, angrier blasts, way more raw, less sneaky. Stuff like, you're a selfish jerk after everything we did for you. Happy Thanksgiving alone, loser. Think you're better than us? You're nothing without us. I actually laughed at that last one, a little shaky laugh that even surprised me. It just showed how right I'd been to leave. If he still thought I was worthless, then why were they all freaking out without me? I didn't write back. Nope, not a single word. Instead, I typed one last message, short, sweet, and to the point. This number's getting disconnected today. I've cut all financial strings and everything else I had to do with my family. Don't even try to get in touch with me. Any attempt to make me feel bad, intimidate me, or lay a guilt trip on me is going straight to my lawyer. That's what I sent to the family group chat. Then I didn't even wait to see what would happen. I just killed my phone. I took the SIM card out and broke it in half, nice and clean. It was an amazing feeling. Like finally being done with a horrible chapter in a book you never wanted to be in. The next few weeks were all about building my new life, little by little. It wasn't some big, fancy thing. I stayed in crummy hotels, sent out a ton of job applications, and made a million little phone calls and filled out so much paperwork. I severed every single connection with precision. I blocked my parents from my medical stuff. I took them off my emergency contacts. I froze my credit for a month just in case Josh got any crazy ideas. And slowly the chaos just sort of faded away. The frantic calls and emails lessened and then stopped. No one was pounding on my door. They didn't know where I was. I was basically a ghost to them. A ghost who took everything with him when he left. One crisp, bright December morning, I was sitting in a tiny cafe in a new city, hundreds of miles away, signing a lease for a little but really nice apartment. It wasn't much, but it was all mine. No co-signers, no hidden debts, just me standing on my own. The landlord slid the keys across the table with a smile. "Welcome home," he said. I grabbed the keys. The cold metal felt so good in my hand. And for the first time in ages, I actually believed it was over. Months later, I heard from a cousin, one of the few who'd always treated me right, what happened after I split. They repoed Josh's truck, sure enough. He went ballistic at the dealership, yelling about how loyal he'd been, how they'd betrayed him, but it didn't matter. They tossed him out of his apartment within a month. He tried to crash at my parents', but things blew up instantly. See, without all the second chances and the way my family always covered for him, Josh wasn't so Mr. Charming anymore. His business, it tanked, no surprise there. His creditors came after him like sharks, taking everything. I heard whispers of awful fights, Josh blaming my folks, my parents blaming each other. It was a real mess, totally unlike the perfect picture they'd always tried to project. The last I heard, he was stuck in some crummy little apartment in a bad part of town, working a job he hated. My parents started quietly selling stuff to pay off his debts. Their boat, the one they loved to show off, gone. Dad's classic car, gone. Mom's Italy trip savings, poof. Their golden boy had fallen, and without me there to clean up his messes, they all went down with him. I didn't exactly celebrate, though. It felt right, you know? Like the universe finally balancing the scales after what that system did to me, using me up until I was completely drained. Anyway, I landed a new job, a really good one, doing something I'm passionate about. I made some amazing friends, people who cared about who I am inside and out, not just how much money I had. I started traveling whenever the mood struck, even learned to whip up these crazy complicated dishes just for fun. It's been amazing. Now I take these long sunset walks, just me and my thoughts, no deadlines, no demands. And every Thanksgiving, when everyone's all stressed about family dinners and feeling obligated, I'm sitting by my fireplace, happy as can be. It's not that I miss my family, it's that I finally found myself. And this time, no one's gonna take that away from me. Never again.